When we're talking about quadratic equations and functions, we have to remember that these things are all interconnected. So functions, equations, factoring are all interconnected with each other. They're not necessarily the same thing, but they're related to each other. So an equation is when we have an equation equal to 0, and we have this x squared minus 2x minus 15 equals 0. We need to solve this and find x. So we end up having an answer for x. We could have the exact same the equation here, but in the function form, it's equal to y. So this is a graph. Here is a graph. This is an equation we solve for x. Here, when I see this, I need to draw a picture. Okay, so this one here is going to give me a picture that looks like kind of like this. Okay. Now, how these two things are connected is when then the equation or the function is equal to 0, it's where it crosses the y-axis. Okay, so how we connect these two concepts is, and again, although they're very closely related, but they're not exactly the same. But how they are the same is that where this crosses the x-axis is how we connect it to the quadratic equation. Okay, where the graph crosses the x-axis, or when the y is equal to 0, you get solutions to this equation, and that's how they're connected. Now, where does factoring come in? Well, factoring is another way we can find zeros. So it connects us to functions in that we have the zeros of the functions here can give me the factors here, and vice versa. The factors here can give me the zeros of the function. Okay, the factors can also solve my equations for me because I can then use the zero property of multiplication, where each factor, and the zero property of multiplication looks like this. It's a times b equals 0. If a factors are multiplied to equal 0, that means either a equals 0 or b equals 0, okay, and independently of each other. And this is why we want to factors, because when we factor this equation, we can't solve this the way it is. We can't isolate the x and x squared. So if we factor, we can solve these two parts separately from each other. And so factors are connected to equations through their solutions and through the zeros. See, these three concepts are all connected through their zeros. Okay, or essentially, if we think of the graph where it crosses the x-axis. Okay, this is very important to understand that they are, although they're they are very much the same, they're not the same thing. So we need to make sure we're clear. Are we solving an equation? Okay, but we solve an equation that's equal to something here. Are we asked to graph a relationship or to say something about the graph, the whole graph parabola here? Or are we just asked to factor? Okay, and factoring is a process in itself, but the factoring does allow us to solve equations and find zeros for functions.